Welcome back to another video at Yarn as a Second Language. Me llamo Princeton. Y that is Miss Nikki. And ladies and gentlemen, today Nikki's got her teacher outfit on.
I did.
Because she's about to take everybody to school. So I have some questions that I have been asked over the past couple weeks, and questions that I've just seen over and over again. And I thought, who better to answer these questions than Miss Encyclopedia herself, Miss Nikki. And she does not even know the answers or the questions.
I don't know these questions. I'm so nervous. I picked up my knitting, so.
And when I say that, that's real. That's not like, hey, act like I never. No, she really does not know.
I really don't.
what I'm gonna ask. So you all came to see that, so we are going to jump right into it. But first, I got me some Topo Chico. What do you got? Oh my goodness. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I see Ricky back there stuffed in the corner.
Ricky's got a couple of girlfriends.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, whoa. My. Ricky, you dirty llama corn. Wow.
Oh,
all right.
Gracious.
So let's just jump. Nikki likes when I do this.
Knitting.
Let's jump right into it. So
okay.
One question that I know I've asked you in the past, and people ask me quite often, what information should I look for on a yarn label?
Depends on what you're making. Different fibers suited for different things. And you want to think about who you're giving it to, how they're going to use it. I would never give a new mom something made of 100% cashmere fairy fart yarn that she can't throw in the washing machine when babies do what babies do on things. So think about what you want this finished thing to be. Think about how it's going to be used, how it's going to be washed, and your affordability. So I look for fiber content. I look for how much is on a skein. I look for the fiber weight, the weight of the yarn. If it's fingering, we're going to make some socks. If it's thick and bulky, I'm going to make something that's a bold fashion statement. So you always have to have your finished object in mind when you're yarn shopping. That's going to save you a lot of heartache down the road, because nothing's very frustrating when you get to your project and it's not working out because you got the wrong weight, or you can't wear the fiber around your neck or your head, or you give somebody something that they ruin the first time they try to wash it. So keep your finished objects in mind when you are yarn shopping.
That was a lot in one little bite.
I'm sorry.
No, but that was good. That was real good. The only thing when I asked you the question, it's been a long time ago, you also mentioned about a die lot number.
Die lot's huge. Tell them about that, Princeton. I'll sit back.
I am very versed on that because I only bought so much yarn. I didn't buy enough. Imagine that, me. And when I went back, Nikki said, make sure you get the same lot, the die lot number. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. So she told me that basically they make these yarn colors in batches. And if you have the same die lot number, they're going to be pretty much identical. So you can continue on with the project without any color variations or what have you. Now, if they are a different die lot number, there's a chance it's going to be a slight difference.
I've seen them with a lot of different,
Really?
so much so that somebody started knitting a sweater and they got up to here, and then it's like a light purple versus the deep, royal purple they were trying with. So keep in mind your finished object,
Right.
get what you can. A lot of places will allow you to return it if you haven't, adulterated the yarn in some way. If you haven't reskeined it or rolled it into a ball, or, nobody wants to take back dirty yarn or partial balls or anything. But just ask ahead of time, can I return this if I don't use this? It's better to have too much and be able to return it than not have enough.
I agree. So question number 2, and you kind of touched on it on the first question. What is meant by yarn weight classifications? Because I know on the yarn level, there's always some kind of picture.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
So I think it's called the Craft Yarn Council, maybe? See, now you're gonna make me crazy because I'll have to go back and look up all these things. But there is a I don't know if it's international. There is a US at least standard of yarn weight. And they have used these pictographs to depict the yarn weight. Worsted, this is a worsted, that would be a 4. Something less than that is going to be a thinner yarn. You're going to have a DK, I think it's a 3, a fingering, a lace weight, things like that. Bulky is probably I think chunky might be 5, bulky might be 6, things like that. So this is just a pictograph depiction of what kind of weight the yarn is going to be. So if you see a 4, that's going to be a worsted yarn. That's kind of your middle of the road. Less than that, it's going to be thinner. More than that, it's going to be thicker, bulkier.
I told you, everybody. She knows her stuff. All right, let's move on to number 3. Okay. Can I substitute one yarn weight for another yarn weight?
You can,
okay,
but it's trickier. Depending on your gauge. Gauge is how many stitches per inch you're getting when you knit up your swatch. I know everybody's knitting swatches, aren't they? Little test knits of your yarns to see how they behave. How they behave on the needle size you're using, how they behave in the pattern you're using. So, I forgot the question. What?
If you can use substitute one yarn weight for another yarn weight.
Sometimes. More often people switch out needle sizes. So on a worsted, I have, as we've said before in the podcast, I'm a very relaxed knitter. My stitches, I probably get, very loose gauge. Meanwhile, somebody else who's a very tight knitter or a controlled knitter, they're going to get, their fabric's going to look a lot different than mine. If I go down a size and they go up a size, we may get the same swatch the same count in our swatch. This matters when you're making garments. I don't want a bulletproof garment that I can't get my arms through. I can't put my arms down, we all want to make fabrics that mold to our bodies, or a fabric that is to the purpose. Your crochet dishcloth back there is going to have a lot different drape than than a hat or a cowl or baby blanket. So we want to make sure our fabrics. When you start talking about garments, that's where it gets really hard, because they're talking about stitches per inch. If my body is so many inches around, I want to make sure I'm knitting that so I get the garment to fit. If I'm getting a lot more stitches or a lot fewer stitches, my garment's not going to fit. It's either going to be too big, too small, whatever. So I would say try to stay within the same yarn weight category, but experiment with your needles. Experiment, with relaxing your knitting, or, kind of stiffening up things to get the gauge you want.
Okay. So staying on the subject of substituting yarns, can you substitute one brand for another brand in the same project?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Get the fabric you want, get the affordability you want, get the usability you want. If a pattern calls for super expensive, inaccessible, out of my budget yarn, why, I very definitely can make it out of whatever I want to, as long as it's something I want that I'm comfortable with. I know there was a big discussion in the knitting and crocheting community about yarn affordability. Switch it out. Use what you want.
Amen.
And I think that's the beauty of our craft. If I see a red sweater that looks great and it's awesome, I don't have to make a red sweater. I can make a purple sweater. I can make a green sweater. I can make a sweater, if I'm allergic to wool, I can make a sweater out of acrylic. I can make a sweater out of, cashmere and silk if I'm feeling fancy. I think this is what crafting means, that you adapt something and make it to your specifications. You turn it into yours. It's always going to be yours. It came from your hands. It's going to be your product. Make it something you love. Don't just make it, just like somebody else made it just because. Make something you love.
Okay. So our next question, and it was more geared towards me, but I believe you can answer as well. And it was basically like, what are the differences between they asked crochet hooks made out of different materials like aluminum versus plastic and steel, bamboo. And the way I answered it, and maybe knitting's the same way, it doesn't matter what the material of the crochet hook is made out of. The only thing that really matters is the size, which is labeled in millimeters here in the US. I'm not sure about other places. And also usually with the letter associated with the size of the hook. So is knitting needles the same way?
So here's bamboo. I started out with bamboo knitting needles. Bamboo has a little more grab on it, so your stitches aren't going to slide around as much. When I teach people, I start them out on bamboo because it's got a little more drag on it. Your stitches aren't going to slide around as much. Everybody has seen the metal knitting needles and Joann's, Michael's. This is where a lot of people start. This is where you go in your grandma's old crafting room. She's probably got a lot of metal knitting needles. You can see this one's a lot longer than this one. That's also a preference. Can't get it all on screen. There we go. That's also a preference. I started out on these long needles because I could brace it against bad form. I could brace it against my leg to get those stitches going. So I needed some more support when I was a beginner. What else do I have back here? Got a rosewood knitting needle. This was a gift from somewhere. It's a little slicker than the bamboo. Still maybe about the same size. So knitting needles, crochet needles, your tools come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and materials. It's what you feel comfortable with. Like I said, I started out on bamboo. This works for very slippery, slick yarns. I typically use, I think I have a set of the Knit Picks interchangeable needles, and they are birch, I think, which is another wood, but I think it's more like the rosewood. It's got a little more, it's a little more slick. It's a little faster for me. Still use the metal when I need to, grab them, use them, but find what's comfortable for you. People say that these wooden kind of natural materials, they are warmer in your hands than the metal. The metal, you pick up metal is kind of cool, kind of cold. There's some plastic needles. I probably have some of every kind. There's plastic. There's I can't reach anymore. But there's a lot of materials. Find what works for you. Find what you got. Use what you got.
Okay. So question number 6 is, what are double point and singular knitting needles used for?
Okay. This was not planned. Double pointed needles. I don't think I have any accessible right this second. Double pointed, and I'm not going to pull my project off of this to show you, but double pointed needles are knitting needles, and they have, I can pull it out, a cord that connects these two. So the body, our bodies are a series of tubes, cylinders, and to make circular items, I'm using circular needles. So I can go around in a circle here. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on over here. Sorry, continue on.
Thought you were sinking down. So, short lesson, double pointed needles. These are, sorry, circular needles, circular items. This is a cowl that I'm working on. And I'm going around and around and around and around. Double pointed needles. I do have some of those back here. Sorry, I didn't know I was going to be doing acrobatics on the podcast. So,
Go ahead. We weren't doing nothing.
Double pointed needles usually come in a pack of 4 or 5, and these serve the same purpose, but for smaller diameter. So if I wanted to make a sweater, this is not enough circumference to go around my body. But I would get a larger set of circular needles. Double pointed needles, you can do a hat, you know, a little bitty hat. I don't have a hat project nearby. Oh, yes, I do. So to finish a crown, you know, when you get up here, you have very few stitches. It's not going to go all the way around this huge circumference. So you have to have something to use to go a little bit shorter. So these go shorter, and they're double pointed because your stitches move around them. So as you empty one needle, the other needle gets into your project. So it's just a rotating kind of series until I think I finished this up. Maybe it had 5 or 6 stitches on it. There's no way 6 stitches are going to fit on all the way around here. So double pointed needles are for smaller circumference things, socks, gloves, the decreases of hats, things like that. Circular needles, you can do small diameter knitting on there. I choose to use double pointed. There's a technique called magic loop where you use a big needle and you kind of shift your stitches around so you can make those small circles in your knitting. But that's what they're used for. They're just small diameter knitting, and circular needles are just, you know, cylindrical knitting. So we can fit over our hips, our sides, our chest, our arms, you know, our wrists to make circular objects.
Okay.
Felt like that was a ramble and a stretch, and y'all are making me work.
Goodness gracious. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm sorry. This doesn't want to stay.
If you're tired, we can stop.
Yeah.
You're just
So my next question is, we did touch on a little bit, but what exactly is gauge, and like how is it determined?
So your gauge is a measurement of how many stitches per unit of length, whether you're using millimeters or inches, you're getting when you craft. This tells us if my head is 20 inches around, how many stitches am I going to need to get 20 inches around my head for a hat or something? So this is what we're measuring gauge. And a lot of times you can find little things like this to measure your gauge. So you're measuring, oh, where'd my little swatch go? How many stitches you get in a row, and how many stitches you get per row, and how many rows you can get per, let's just say inches, per inch. So stitches per inch is on this little, I don't think that's very clear, but that's what that says. So you're measuring your stitches per inch. So when you're looking on a yarn label, so they're saying that the gauge that you can get for this, they're not recommending a project. This is just what they've recommended. For knitting, usually they'll list the knitting gauge and the crochet gauge. It might be on the same picture, but it says 18 stitches. So if you use on the knitting gauge, it says US 8. Those are the size needles they recommend. It has 5 millimeter above that, so they're trying to give you some metrics. 18 stitches, 4 inches. I'm sorry, 4 inches by 4 inches. So they think you should get 18 stitches per 4 inches.
Okay.
And that you should get, on this bottom part, it says 24 rows per 4 inches using a size 8 needle with this yarn.
Okay.
And if you're making a garment and they say you should get 18 stitches per row, per 4 inches, and 24 rows per 4 inches in this pattern. I think they recommend stockinette. They didn't say that, but I think that's the standard. So then if you're getting more or fewer stitches than that, you're going to have to make an adjustment if you want to make a garment the same measurements that I give you. If I write a pattern and say your hat should be this big to fit normal heads, so a head this size should fit this hat with this gauge. If I'm getting more than this or less than this, my hat's going to be bigger or smaller than that what they've written the pattern for. And you just make a simple adjustment. Maybe I need to go down a needle size. Maybe I need to go up a needle size to get what they recommend as gauge if I want my garment to measure finished what they have written this pattern to be. Sounded a little jumbled. I'm sorry.
Got it.
I'm sorry.
It
took me a long time to understand gauge. I still don't do knitting confession. I still don't do swatches very much because I tend to knit the same things over and over again. I knit hats, I'll knit cowls, I'll knit things that blankets where gauge doesn't matter. I do enough math in my day-to-day life where knitting, sometimes it's just a little too much for me. So I just let that go. That's bad, but it's true. But if you're going to knit sweaters and things, it's simple math. You just kind of measure out what you're getting versus what they think you should be getting to get a garment of similar size. And it's just fiddling. Nobody can tell you my gauge. Nobody can tell you, it depends on the yarn, depends on the needles, depends on if I'm relaxed that day. It depends on if I'm stress knitting and, everything's tightened up and things like that. It depends. I've come back to a project and my gauge has changed. I was relaxed and, oh, okay, come back. And I'm like, oh, these people, oh.
That's how she usually is.
Just all the time. Arg. Arg. I say arg too.
Arg.
Apparently. So that's a quick and dirty explanation of gauge. It is just the stitches per inch, the stitches per measurement that they think you should be getting with this yarn, with these needles to get a garment this size.
Perfect. So we got only one more question.
Oh.
Question number 8.
I'm scared.
How are you feeling? You feel good? Does this feel good for you?
I'm scared because I know you.
No, this is a real question. So
okay.
What is the best way to launder a project?
Again, your knitting label is going to tell you a lot of information. All these laundry symbols down here, somewhere in the world there's deciphering for that. I don't know it offhand, but I think the first one says you can wash it. I don't know. This is probably all wrong. But those are laundering symbols you can look up. I think you can tumble, and it says it underneath: machine wash, warm, tumble dry, normal heat. So that is probably how you should treat your garment. Some garments, even though it says it, I'm going to hand wash it because I spent a lot of time on things, you know. Sometimes you want to baby your objects, but you want to get to know your fabric. Again, this is where the swatch comes in very handy, because if this says, you know, throw it in some bleach and do all that, if I do this to my swatch and it disintegrates, I'm not going to use this on my, you know. Treat your swatch how you want to treat your finished object. If you want this to be, if you want your finished object to be able to be thrown in the washing machine and, you know, home dryer, treat your swatch that way. And I say that, and then I have to say sometimes swatches lie, but you can get a baseline feel for your yarn. And that's the best advice I can get. Get a feel for your yarn. Know how you want to treat it, the object you want to make. Because you're going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours with this yarn, and hopefully a lifetime with your finished object, or somebody's going to appreciate it for a lifetime. You want to know that they're going to get enjoyment out of it, that it's going to hold up, that it's going to be living up to all your hard work that you've put into it. So if I had bought, you know, a great quantity of yarn, or spent a lot of money on a yarn that I just really wanted to work with, I'm going to test it out. And a swatch is the very best way to do that.
You know what I hear from all that?
What?
Swatches be lying.
Swatches lie sometimes. Especially with gauge, because, you know, I'm not going to knit this much, but if I'm making a sweater, I am going to knit this much. So it's hard to, you know, get a representative in such a small bid. This is not what they would recommend. They would recommend me knit a little bit more than that, but I was just fooling around. This is an acrylic that I kind of knew how it was going to behave, but I just wanted to make sure. But sometimes swatches lie. You make your little swatch, then you knit it over a whole garment, and it's like,
So I'm going to throw a bonus question out there.
oh.
This is really more for my benefit, but can you just talk about what we call blocking?
Blocking will make your project sing. I mean, so when you are crafting an item, have you ever noticed that it just looks crumpled up and it's just kind of sad and it doesn't look like the picture? When you blocking is kind of pulling your object into shape, making it, you know, how it's supposed to be. You know, you don't get dressed and just throw your clothes on. You iron them, you hang them up, Normal people iron, hang their clothes up. You treat your clothes. They say hangers are a form of blocking. You know, our shoulders kind of mimic hangers. So you want your clothes to drape a certain way. You also want your knitted or crocheted items to drape a certain way. And when you're crafting it, this is not blocked. You can see it's turned up on the side, and I squinched it up. And secret swirl, I'm going to tell you, I think I found a drop stitch, so that's going to be fun. Yeah, yeah. So, but blocking is you want your item to drape the way it's supposed to. You want it to flow over your body the way it's supposed to. So when I knit my cowl, this is a cowl. Oh, here's the drop stitch. That's called trying to do too much. When I knit my cowl, it was squinched up. I gave it a spritz of water. I flattened it out. I think I used a couple of pins to make sure it stayed in shape, and let it dry. So, and it came out, you know, very flat, very nice, very laying down. That's not how it came out when I knit it. So blocking is just giving a nice finish, shaped finish to your object.
Wow. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a quiz after class.
Did I pass? I was so nervous. I didn't know what you were going to ask.
Comment down below. What do you think? Did Nikki do a good job explaining?
This is a pop quiz. I didn't know.
I think you answered everything great. I mean, you answered my questions.
Well, I hope so. There's a lot. I mean, the fiber world is vast, and we're all learning from each other.
Are we, though? Who are you learning from?
Oh, I learned. Where's my textile book? Wait.
Oh, no.
Wait.
No.
Oh.
Nope. Well, cool. I appreciate all the information. I'm sure everybody else is appreciative as well.
I'm sure they're asleep. But...
No.
Well, I'm a fiber nerd. I like this stuff. But when I started, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. For years after, I'm still learning about things. Still.
Okay.
How to fix things, how why people do this, why is it this way?
Cool. Well, that's all I've got. So you are dismissed from class, everybody. There may be
a drink. This is water, by the
way. It's all right. Thank you very much. If you guys got any questions that we didn't cover, maybe throw it down in the comment section down below, and we may gather more questions up. And
maybe next time we have a Princeton session.
Oh gosh, take it easy on me, people, please. I am not Miss Nikki. So, but yeah, if you got any more questions, just throw it in the comment section. We'll make a list of them, and if you guys like this sort of thing, let us know, and we will do this again with other questions that you all have. So until then, we will see you all at the next video. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
I'm trying.